Okay, today I spent a lot of time trying to figure stuff out on the the port of Spaceshooter. Spaceshooter is a game I wrote in Java a while ago, and I've been trying to port it into the Godot engine. And so I have Godot up, and this is basically the view area of the game level. So this is the emitter, this is the player, and you don't see any enemies because I dynamically generate those. And then the previous one video, I went over that and did the border that will contain the enemies, because they're rigid bodies and they will bounce off things. So today I was struggling with trying to figure out a way to get the enemies to figure out they've been hit, what have they been hit by, and then if it's the emitter, to eliminate. And I struggled. I even went into the my game code, and I said, hey, if the laser, I'm going to loop through all the the children of the game itself, and then if it matches the enemy, I have this comment out because I'm not using it right now, but if it matched the enemy, then I could say, oh, then now I know it's an enemy, and the laser's going, and I figure, hey, I'll just have, all I need is the X and Y coordinates of both of them, do quick calculation, then eliminate it. And I said, there's got to be an easier way. This is a game engine. In the game that I wrote in Java, the Spaceshooter in Java, I used a framework called Slick 2D, and all I had to do was give it two objects and say, or take one object, say dot intersects another object, and boom, I know whether or not these two things are hitting. So I could just say laser hitting this, okay, take that out. But then I said, there's got to be another way. So I started messing around with the emitter. And the emitter is just a little circular graphic. Let's see. Yeah, this one here. It's just a little circle for now. I was figuring later maybe add some special effects to it, but for now, that's all it is. So, go in the game. So, I said this is the code right here. We have an input. I did the input event for the mouse, and so I know, okay, I can grab the event position and then set the position of the emitter to that, and start a timer, emit the signal to the game object so it knows something's going down, and then show itself. And then okay, this is where the plumbing for the timer is set up. Hides itself right after they're ready, and then we have on the timer timeout, just end the emitting and self-hide. So that's cool. And now what I then had to figure out, okay, I just couldn't get the emitter to show up in the enemy. Because in the enemy, I said, you know what I'm going to do? On enemy body entered. And so at first I was printing everything that they're hitting. Then it dawned on me that the enemies are hitting the player and themselves and that whole border I created. And so I had to filter out those. I'm just trying to figure out, am I getting the emitter? And it never would show up. I got player to show up at one time because I changed the player to a rigid 2D body. And so then that created a little different dynamic in the playing, but I then don't have the control over the player movement that I would like to have, because it's not just bouncing off things, you're going to have to be able to fly it also. So I couldn't get the emitter I couldn't get the enemy to identify that it's been hit by a laser, or the emitter. So then I had to go back to the emitter and figure out, okay, the emitter could detect that it's getting hit. And then I realized it can't be that simple to get rid of the enemy just by doing Q3. Boom, it's gone. But, yep, that's the way it works. So now when I run this, oh, also under the player, I did a body entered, and if it's an enemy hitting it, I emit the signal player hit. That calls the game. It has a signal, so it. Where is it at? So on player hit, I just reduce it by 1 for now for testing. Probably export that, as a setting, so I can set that outside of it. And who knows, I might mess with the health and how much health something takes as the levels changes and stuff like that. But for now, I'm just trying to do a straight port of what I've done before. So let me go ahead and run the game, and you'll see that I now have a health indicator, and the player is getting its health. Now, if we use the up arrows and the side arrows, we can move the player around. I have one problem. When I click and fire the emitter, right there, you'll notice even though the emitter's gone, the enemies are still disappearing. So the emitter's still there, you just can't see it. I did a hide on it. And I searched and searched and searched and looked for a way that I could disable programmatically the collision of the emitter, but I don't think that's gonna. I couldn't find it, so I'm gonna have to. It then dawned on me that, hey, why don't I just move the emitter when it's not emitting outside the boundaries of the screen or the boundaries of the box, and then it'll be somewhere where the enemy can't hit. So I'm going to go ahead and change that now. We'll go ahead and stop that. So under the emitter, when we have the timer timeout is where it says stop emitting. So not only should I self-hide, but I should, let's see, position x equal, and x can be a negative number, so we'll go up. Well, actually we don't need to go x, we'll just go, x. We'll make it a negative, and set that to, what, negative, just 20, let's make it 25. And that should move the emitter out. We'll click again, we're going to reset the position anyway, so that shouldn't be a problem. So just that little change should, hopefully, actually work. And so now we can fire the emitter. The emitter does what it says, and it's working the way it's supposed to. So I'm getting closer to the game. On the original game, I didn't have the enemies bouncing off each other. They could just slide right over each other. And I know there's masking and stuff I could do so that they don't bounce into each other and only bounce off the walls. And I may do that just for a support, but I actually like the enemies bouncing off each other. Kind of makes it more interesting. Now, one other thing I have to do is, as you can see, the player right there rotates and follows the mouse so it can line up the shot. However, if you move the mouse afterwards, the player still follows the mouse. So I'm going to have to some kind of signal or something into the player that the emitter is emitting. I might have to fire that. I don't know. I haven't figured how I'm going to do that yet, but I'll have to get that. So if the emitter's emitting, pretty much the player has to keep in that direction. Not only does it have to keep in direction, but since it can move, if I fired down there, it needs to track the position where it fired, not just keep facing the same direction it was. So that will make things a little more interesting. Then I'll also have to add on the emitter, the sound effect for the emitter, and then I have to do the explosion sound effect for the enemies, and then I have to see enemies. Oh, an animation for the explosion, and then I'll have to implement a score and shields. So let me just, for the heck of it, show you what happens when I re-implement the game code. This here that I'd commented out before. You don't need to print that, but this. Don't need to print that either, but you'll see. I'm leaving this in here because at some point, like I said, I might make this into further levels or something. Give you like smart bombs, like I think Defender. Was it Defender? Yeah, I think Defender had a smart bomb where you could just hit one button and destroys all the enemies on the screen. So I may do something like that. It may not destroy all the enemies, but it might just destroy these enemies. Because I'm thinking on other levels there's probably going to be other enemies and different kinds of enemies, and we'll see where I go or if I go anywhere with this at later. But for now, using this to learn the Godot engine so I can get a better idea how all this stuff works. So now if I hit that button, fire, boom, just like that, everything's gone. Wow, this game's pretty easy. So I need to put this back. And make sure it still works. Regression. So click. And the emitter's working. So that's I've been struggling a bit. It's a different way of thinking when you're using these nodes and stuff. When I wrote the program itself in Java, I had more granular control over things, but again, once you write a little function that controls where your how your enemies work, and you just put them into an array and generate that and flip through them, and you know it's not that hard to do. But again, you know, these game engines do a lot of work for you. Fortunately, that means you have to learn to use the game engine, and you have to learn how to use the parts that go along with it, and learn that, you know, okay, a rigid body with a static body, and to be honest, I'm having a hard time just finding the information I want. Like here, let me flip over to like this, you know. Oh, here's a variable. It's disabled collision shape 2D. Disabled collision shape has no effect in the world. Sweet, that's what I want. But there's no indication on how you could do this, or can you change it? It's a variable, but is it a property you can change? I don't know. I couldn't find. So these are all my searches for, you know, how do I do this? How do I do that? Looping through the I guess is where I got the stuff that loop through the children so I can then destroy them. But I didn't do this recursive stuff because I didn't need to. I was looking for a specific type of. I don't have children within children within children, so I didn't need all that recursion. But anyway. So, that's where I'm at today. And this, I don't know if you notice, this has been running a while now. You'll see that all the enemies are slowing down because they bounced off each other and bounced off that, and they're just basically slowing down. So, I might have to, I don't know, add, well, we'll see. I mean, all you'd have to do is wait until everything slows down and then shoot everything. So, but anyway. I'm saying anyway a lot. I guess we'll call that done for today. So, catch you later.